welcome once again to On the Record and to Stephen Green. Stephen, the head of the Church of England, got enough problems there, is King Charles III. And he's not making it very easy, is he? I mean, he's visiting alternative lifestyles, especially down there in near Stoke-on-Trent, I think it is, the Arboretum. Obviously a great place celebrating Poppy Day as we approach. But he's got certain things wrong, hasn't he?
Well, I mean, you mentioned the head of being head of the Church of England. The Church of England itself is in a state now with the global south of the Anglican community because of having chosen a girl to be the Archbishop of Canterbury. So that has completely separated now the Church of England from the global south, GAFCON, the Global Anglican Futures Conference, and the King honouring homosexuals in the forces, which he did at the Arboretum. This is to do with people who have been dismissed from the services on account of their homosexuality. Now, for me, this should always have been evidence-based. If somebody was caught doing something, then that would be a cause for dismissal. But if they were just same-sex attracted, as we say, then that should not be for any trouble at all. But anyway, people have been dismissed, and there's also the problem that he's honouring those who were dismissed, but he's not honouring those who have left the services after being approached or even molested by a senior officer or NCO of the same sex, and that's happened to a lot of young women in the army. And I mean, young women in the army are prey to not just the lesbian NCOs, but the heterosexual male NCOs as well. And there's just very recently a case where a young woman was actually raped by the sergeant major after some sort of an exercise that they were on. She took her own life after a little while. A few months went by, she took her own life. He received 6 months, and I think half of it was suspended. So the whole of the sexual tensions in the armed forces are something which the monarch really ought to be causing his ministers to address, rather than engaging in vanity projects of sticking yet another little memorial somewhere in the National Arboretum. There's already 400 or so, 400 odd little memorials to this squadron or that ship or whatever, all over the place. And they just put this new one in and sat down. And of course, the big thing for homosexuals is that they know they're doing wrong and they are desperate for honour. That's the thing that this thing has honoured them, and it's a misstep for His Majesty. We must always remember that His Majesty is not bad, he's not wicked, he's not stupid, not evil. He is badly advised when he does something wrong.
The courtiers are encouraging this, are they? Because we've all been encouraged to normalise homosexuality. It started very subtly with a dear old sitcom. It was almost obligatory to have a homosexual that we could giggle about in a sitcom. And this, of course, mainly comes through the BBC, who've got their own problems at the moment. It's an alternative that has now become mainstream, and you can't say anything about it. So the way that we're talking, Stephen, at the moment, carries its own risk.
I mean, the pantomimes and that thing, blokes dressing up as a pantomime dame in the pantomime. There's a sense in which in comedy, in entertainment, we have for decades put up with the odd homosexual. I mean, Max Wall would go on stage, mincing about and turn to the audience and say, "What if that kind of thing has got?" And that's the sense in which they tolerated them when they were in that situation. Or you remember round the horn, the radio program from the 1960s, if I'm not very much mistaken, England in the 70s as well. So you have Hugh Paddock and who was the other one? Not Martin Feldman. Could have been Kenneth Williams, being Julian and Sandy. Oh, Mr. All now, all those that the homosexual talk before it was legal. So that would have been in the 1960s. Well, I should say decriminalised, not legalised, decriminalised, between consenting adults, who, of course, if they were consenting adults doing what they were doing in private, there would be no witnesses anyway, so no one should ever have been convicted. But of course, we all know that Leo Abse brought this measure in just to please and to modify his homosexual friends in Parliament, in the civil service, in the elite, in the echelons. So that's how it all started. Nobody voted for it. It was in no manifesto. The elite just imposed it upon population. And now we see that the majority of the British population, the recent poll just came out yesterday, are in favour of same-sex marriage. I think it's a good thing, whereas the majority in the United States think it's a bad thing. So, essentially, the elite have sort of seduced the people into sin, if you like. We're always it's what the elite have done. The people follow. People do. That's what they do. People need a leader, and those in office are the leadership, for good or ill.
Well, let's analyse this a bit deeper, if we may, because the real danger is that people become predatory agents and convince people at an early age, oh, if you have some unusual feelings, don't worry, it's quite normal. And they're led into homosexuality. Whereas if they were left alone, they would get over the problems naturally.
Indeed. And it's not just in the homosexual contact groups like Friend, Gay Switchboard, where that happens. Somebody ringing up saying, "Well, I think I might be gay." They're never going to say, "No, you aren't," because because homosexuals cannot reproduce. They have to recruit. This is a radical thing I'm saying. They have to recruit. They're always on the lookout for somebody to recruit. I know that. I've had friends like that. I know what it's like. But now it's become institutionalized. That's why we're becoming like Sodom when the elite promote it. Now the elite promote it now in sex education in schools. There's no end of third-party sex education providers are coming in. Teachers are overwhelmed by what they're doing anyway. Somebody comes and says, "Oh look, we can do it. We have the skills to do that." Teachers welcome them with open arms, and they have produced the kind of materials which they always say they're age appropriate, but they never are. And I'm always suspicious, Rodney, of adults who want to talk about sex to other people's children.
Well, I know what you're thinking about. There's a certain gentleman that appears whiter than white and obviously isn't called Stephen Ireland. And you've done an in-depth yourself on this particular guy.
He was one of the leaders of a band called Surrey Pride, so Surrey Homosexual March or Parade that he was involved in. And he said he was not just the leader of it, he set himself up as the head of safeguarding, and he was also the prime mover in the contact group that they had for young people. So, I mean, the scope for abuse was there that anybody could see. But of course, all the politicians in the local government, the coppers, everybody turned a blind eye to it until he was caught molesting a 12-year-old boy, and he's now been sent to prison together with. I mean, this thing was rife in Surrey Pride. The guy he was living with was in it as well. The establishment like to talk about people getting gay married, and they are faithful, and they are monogamous. It's a pack of lies. They are all in any but ostensibly monogamous homosexual couple, particularly the males. There is always either one or both of them engaged in outside flings, as they put it. That is routine. Just read Joe Orton's diaries of the playwright Joe Orton to find out all about that. That it's with the women, it's more like a succession of monogamy. There's a pair of them, and then after a while, a couple of years, then one of them starts to be attractive to other women, and she's I'm not sure about this monogamy anymore, and they split up. And then after, and then before you know where she's monogamous, but with somebody else. So lesbians, it's different kind of thing, but at the heart of it is just a search for someone who will love me, and it's a challenge for the church because we get sucked into either condemning it. The scripture does, no bones about that. Scripture that does condemn it as a sin, or we go along the lines of the Bishop of Oxford, and we write an intellectually lightweight book, dismissing all the scriptures that condemn it, and say, oh no, we've got to come to terms with them and start gay marrying people in church. But the real way that the church should be doing is understanding the pathologies and healing and offering deliverance. That's where the church should be coming in. Not condemnation, not acceptance, but healing and deliverance. If the church were to do that, I think they might have some of the knowledge about that if anybody wants to contact. But
well, can you do that, Stephen? Because you're seen as undesirable, to say the least, and you could be prosecuted by saying, well, we're offering conversion therapy.
Oh, well, the MPs want to make that illegal, of course. They're all for freedom of speech when it suits them, but they don't like freedom of speech, and they certainly do not like any idea of pastors or ministers offering healing or even prayer for unwanted same-sex desires, because if you have same-sex desires, they're unwanted. Hey, you must be mentally ill. So that's how the establishment think, and they want to shut the door on any opportunity for being free from those same-sex desires. It's not easy, because a whole lot of stuff has often gone on in somebody's youth or childhood, but for those desires to take root. But so it's I'm not saying it's easy.
No, it isn't.
But by the grace of God, it's doable.
Yeah. You've shown your ire occasionally about Charles III's mum, Queen Elizabeth II. You don't think that she should have acceded to the Same-Sex Marriage Act? That's a difficult one, Stephen, because which king or queen has actually said to Parliament, no, I know I'm the boss, but it is not expected that the king or queen in the United Kingdom should say, I'm not putting that act through because in this case, it is not what scripture says. She's just let it go through.
I believe it was the Queen of the Netherlands, or the King of the Queen of the Netherlands, I think, who actually abdicated for a day to let a particularly egregious piece of legislation go through. So she didn't give her royal assent to it. The King and the Queen, the monarch does not sign the Acts of Parliament. I don't know how they give that. They give their royal assent to them, and I mean, some of us, the hawks, if you like, might have said that Her Majesty should have refused to give her assent to, the Abortion Act 1967, the Sexual Offences Act 1967, no fault divorce on demand, pornography, the Theatres Act, a whole string of them in the 1960s. So that she could have done that, and if she had refused, that would have meant a constitutional crisis and a general election, and then we'd have, there been all of them. But Majesty didn't do that, and His Majesty now is not doing that. He appears to be siding with them. My particular slant on this is looking at Sodom and Gomorrah asking if we are living in the days of Lot. And the defining characteristic of Sodom and Gomorrah was not just that they have legalized the things that God hates. We're talking about child sacrifice. We're talking about sodomy, temple ritual, prostitution, sodomy. Not only that, but we read all the men of the city came around the house where Lot was sheltering the angels. Which means that the whole thing had become institutionalized. The establishment were promoting it, and that's what we are doing now with things like the buffer zones and promoting homosexuality and the National Arboretum in schools abroad. So by flying the flags on government departments, it's never ending examples of it. So our establishment are promoting it, and every society in the history of the world which has allowed its family base to crumble has been taken over by a stronger monogamous society, with the exception of Sodom and Gomorrah, which was the only society like that because they're the added ingredient of promoting it. That was the only one that was destroyed by God himself. So we're not, we're not in a very good place, I think, at the moment. As a society, that doesn't mean that the Lord is going to rain fire and brimstone from heaven on the West, on Britain, Europe, and Canada, Australia, New Zealand. It doesn't mean that's going to happen. But we see in the United Kingdom that the seeds of a takeover by a stronger, more assertive religion. And taking it back to the king, I was just reading in my Bible reading last night. Astonishing. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and verse 13 says, "Better is a poor and a wise child than an old and foolish king who will no more be admonished." And elsewhere in Proverbs, the Proverb says, "Take away the wicked from before the king, and his throne shall be established in righteousness." So it's the wicked advisors and the king and his Royal Highness, rubbing shoulders with celebrities and lovies and courtiers, civil servants, ministers all the time. And it would take, a constitution of iron to resist all of those pressures. So that's why we say it's the advisors who need to be replaced with men of God.
Before we leave Charles III alone, let's look at the synagogue in Hinton Park, Manchester.
Yeah.
What's the issue there, Stephen?
Well, I mean, look, that was shocking. That was on the knife attack was on the 2nd of October, and the king went up there a couple of weeks later, 2.5 weeks later, on the 20th, and he showed solidarity with the synagogue, with the leaders, and all very well. And then after he'd been in the synagogue, he was mixing with crowds, mixing with the people, and so on. And he said something like, it was a terrible thing to come out of the blue. And that puzzled me, right? Because the attack did not come out of the blue. He must know that it didn't come out of the blue. For the last 2 years, there have been people parading through the streets of London, chanting anti-Semitic slogans. The Community Security Trust, the Jewish organization, recalls something like a threefold increase in anti-Semitic attacks on Jews. Earlier this year, there were yobs who filmed themselves going around, driving in a car, squirting Orthodox Jews with a water pistol from the safety of their car, jeering at them as they did so. They were let off with a caution. David Lammy, where Foreign Secretary, is denouncing Israel at the United Nations. And in fact, it was so bad that Gideon Saar, the Israeli foreign minister, actually blamed the British establishment for the Manchester attack. He blamed it on their anti-Semitism. We have our Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, whose name gives it away, who's showing great sorrow and stuff about the synagogue attack. Yet in 2014, while an MP, there she is in Birmingham, protesting in favour of the divestment boycott campaign against Israel with a flag, with a placard saying support Palestinians. So, I mean, the British establishment, I'm afraid, is anti-Semitic. I'm talking about the politicians, not their majesties. But nevertheless, why? Why on earth does the king go to Manchester and then come out with a blatant untruth? Again, badly advised. He will have spoken to his ministers. They will have been very keen to get into stress that, oh no, this is just very, very rare. Jews are safe here. Business as usual. But we know now that there's a growing presence in our midst for whom hatred, even murder of Jews, is written into their religion, and we are fooling ourselves by giving the impression, as His Majesty often does, that everything can be sorted out over a cup of tea in the drawing room.
Yeah, we're talking about Islam in this, and look, let's be dead honest. We have broken laws big time. We've mentioned homosexuality. We've mentioned the fact that God's people have got to be supported. It says that in Scripture. And if you go against God's people, and we clearly have, you're in big, big trouble. And the whole makeup of this present government is going down that pathway. It's going to lead to disaster.
I think that by recognizing a Palestinian state, the Prime Minister sowed the seeds of judgment on the United Kingdom, because it's very, very clear, the prophecy of Balaam, when he was asked, even paid by the Moabite leader, but I can't remember his name, to curse Israel, said, "How can I curse those whom the Lord has blessed?" And then he said, "Blessed are those who bless thee, Israel, and cursed are those who curse thee." And none of look, I recently read Son of Hamas by Hassan Youssef. He was the son of the one of the commanders of Hamas in the West, what they call the West Bank, Judea and Samaria. And he was a Shin Bet agent. He saved a lot of lives, and then he revealed himself and had to flee to America, where he lives now. He started off being a Christian. Well, he became a Christian, and then he's fallen away slightly. But he says that what he calls what's going on in the Holy Land Palestinianism, and he says it's Palestinianism. It's just a fiction. You can't recognize Palestinian state when no such entity exists or even can exist. And I'm also taking slight issue with any thought that that God under the new covenant has forgotten all about Israel. We tend to forget that the new covenant is about personal salvation. God's dealings with nations carry on, much the same as the law of gravity carries on under the new covenant. So that God has not rescinded his promises to Israel. And the prophet Jeremiah says, as long as there's a sun in the sky and the moon's going round and the tides are coming in and out, then the Lord will not forget Israel. If those ordinances stop, says Jeremiah, then the Lord will forget Israel. I see no sign of those ordinances stopping anytime soon. So the Lord still has a place in his heart for Israel and for Judah. And you just have to look at the fulfillments of prophecies. In 1917 was a huge one when General Allenby liberated Jerusalem without a shot being fired. But we can't go. I'd love to go into that. As birds flying, Isaiah, look it up. Brilliant, absolutely astonishing story. But no, we need to be on the side of those whom God has blessed. No doubt about that. As a nation.
And it's as simple as that. Thank you so much, Stephen. Run out of time as we always do, but we'll see you very shortly.
Every blessing.